Listen carefully, children. Let the fire crackle and the night deepen, for I will weave a tale as old as the baobab and as fresh as the morning dew. This is the story of Amina, the noble dancer of the ancestors. It is a story of jealousy and exile, of spirits and justice. But it is not a simple tale. It is a journey of many moons, of many steps. So draw close and let your hearts beat with the rhythm of the drum. Our story begins in a village called Takumi, a place woven between the whispering river and the golden savanna. Hear the distant drum, children. It beats with the pulse of a happy village. In this first part of our story, we will meet Amina, whose feet speak a language older than words. We will see the love her people have for her, and the shadow of envy that begins to creep, cold as a serpent, into the heart of a powerful chief. This is the season of innocence, but even the brightest sky can birth a storm. Let us begin. The village of Takumi slept soundly, cradled between the great river and the endless savanna. But in the hut of Kofi, the master drummer, a child was being born. Her mother, Grace, labored as the river outside rushed over the stones, its voice a constant, comforting murmur. When the child finally slid into the world, she did not cry. Instead, she looked around with wide, knowing eyes, and a silence fell upon the hut, deeper than the night itself. The old midwife, Nana Ya, whose own grandmother had spoken with the spirits, held the baby and declared, "This one has the river in her blood. She will move as the water moves." They named her Amina, which means peace. As Amina grew, so did the truth of Nana Ya's words. Before she could walk, she would sway to the beat of her father's drums, her small body a perfect echo of the rhythm. Her first steps were not mere steps, they were a dance. A saying among our people is true: the spirit of a child is first spoken to by the drum. The women in the market would stop their trading just to watch her spin. Her laughter, like the jingle of the shells she would one day wear. The elders, smoking their pipes under the great fig tree, would nod their heads, seeing in her movements the echoes of dances they had not witnessed since their own youth. Amina was not just a child of Kofi and Grace. She was a child of the village, a gift from the river itself, a promise of beauty yet to come. Kofi, Amina's father, was not just a drummer. He was the keeper of the village's voice. His hands, cracked and strong, could make the gem weep, laugh, or summon warriors from their dreams. He saw in his daughter a reflection of his own soul, but where he spoke with his hands, she spoke with her entire being. He began to teach her the old rhythms, the ones that belonged to the planting, the harvest, the hunt, and the naming of children. He would beat a slow, heavy rhythm, the rhythm of the ancestors, and tell her, "Feel this in your bones, Amina. This is the heartbeat of our grandfathers." She would close her eyes, and her feet would begin to trace patterns in the dust, patterns that told the story of the rhythm. One evening, as the sun bled orange and red into the river, Kofi played a rhythm he had never played before. It was an ancient rhythm, one passed down from his grandfather's grandfather, a rhythm for calling the rain. As his hands moved, a wind rustled the leaves of the baobab, and the air grew thick. Amina, just 7 years old, began to dance. Her arms became the sweeping branches of the trees in a storm. Her spinning body was the whirlwind. The villagers gathered, watching in awe. A single, fat drop of rain landed on the dusty square. Then another. Soon, a soft, life-giving rain fell upon Takumi. The lesson was clear. The dance is not just movement. It is a prayer the body prays. From that day, Amina was no longer just Kofi's daughter. She was the village's dancer. Chief David was a man of power, but power without wisdom is like a calabash with a hole. It can never be full. His compound was the largest in Takumi, his granaries overflowing his word law. Yet, his heart was a small, dry place. He loved the sound of his own voice and the way people bowed their heads when he passed. The adoration the villagers showered upon Amina was a thorn in his side. When she danced, people did not bow to him. They did not see his fine robes or his many wives. They saw only the girl whose feet painted stories in the air. He watched her from the shadows of his veranda, his jaw tight. He saw the elders, men who should know better, weep with joy at her performances. He heard the young men whisper her name with a reverence they never showed him. His advisor, a slippery man named Jacob, saw the chief's jealousy and fanned its flames like a blacksmith's bellows. "A dancer gathers the people, chief," Jacob would murmur, his voice like oil. "But a chief rules them. Which light do you think should burn brighter?" He fed the chief's insecurity with stories of other villages where dancers had become more powerful than the chief themselves. Our ancestors warned, "Jealousy is a termite that eats the house from within before you see the damage." Chief David's house was beginning to tremble. The festival of the New Yams was the most important celebration of the year. It was a time to give thanks to the ancestors and the earth for a bountiful harvest. The entire village would gather in the central square. Drums would beat for 3 sons, and the finest dancers would compete for the honor of leading the Thanksgiving dance. This year, everyone knew who that dancer would be. Amina was now a young woman, her beauty as radiant as the morning star. When she walked with the grace of a gazelle. When she danced, the world stopped. Chief David, draped in his finest leopard skin cloth, sat on his royal stool, his face a mask of forced benevolence. As Amina entered the circle, a hush fell over the crowd. She wore a skirt of rich indigo-dyed cloth, and around her ankles and wrists, hundreds of delicate seed pods, carefully dried, created a rhythm of their own. Around her neck hung the sacred mask of her grandmother, a small, wooden face with eyes of polished cowrie shells. As the drums began a slow, rolling thunder, Amina closed her eyes. She was not just performing for the living. She was performing for those who had come before. It is our tradition that at such festivals, the ancestors are the most honored guests, sitting just behind the veil of the world. Amina's dance was the key to that veil. Her movements told the story of the yam, its planting in the dark soil, its struggle towards the sun, its harvest, and its gratitude. The people were transported. Chief David's smile became a thin, hard line. That night, after the festival, Grace, Amina's mother, had a dream. In the dream, she stood at the edge of the river. The water was not its usual brown, but a shimmering silver, like the back of a fish in the moonlight. From the water, the ancestors rose. They were not terrifying. They were like figures of mist, their faces kind but serious. The eldest among them, a woman with a voice like rustling leaves, spoke. "Your daughter's light is a great fire," she said. "It warms the village, but it will also draw the moths who wish to be consumed by it, or who wish to snuff it out. A shadow grows in the house of the chief. Tell her to guard her steps. Tell her that the dancer's true power is not in the applause, but in her connection to the root." Grace woke with a start, her heart pounding. The dream was as real as the mat she lay on. She went to Amina and told her everything. She spoke of the silver river, the misty figures, and the warning. Amina listened, her face serene. "The ancestors watch over us, mother," she said softly. "A dream is a whisper from the world of the spirits," she remembered Nana, yes, saying. "I will not be afraid." But a small seed of caution was planted in her heart. She did not know the form the shadow would take, but she knew to be watchful. She began to dance not just with joy, but with a new awareness, a prayer for protection woven into every step. Jacob, the chief's advisor, was a master of the unseen snare. He approached Amina one day at the riverbank as she filled her water pot. "Amina, the sun itself seems to pause to watch you," he said, his smile wide but not reaching his small, dark eyes. He offered to carry her pot for her, a gesture that was both unusual and improper. Amina, raised to be polite, thanked him but declined. "The chief himself speaks of your talent," Jacob continued, falling into step beside her. "He believes your gifts could bring even greater honor to Takumi. He wishes to discuss a special role for you." His words were like honey, but Amina felt a strange unease, a coldness beneath the sweetness. She remembered her mother's dream. "I am honored by the chief's thoughts," she replied carefully. "My dance is for the village, for the ancestors. It requires no special role." Jacob's smile faltered for a fraction of a second. Of course. Purity itself. But think on it. The chief's favor can open many doors. It would be wise to keep them open. He left her then, but his words lingered like a bad smell. She knew that a man who speaks too fairly often has a crooked heart. She decided to tell her father about the strange conversation. Chief David sat on his stool, a magnificent piece carved from a single block of ebony, its seat supported by figures of his ancestors. It was the symbol of his authority. As he sat, he stared at the mask Amina had worn at the festival. Jacob had procured a drawing of it. "It's the old grandmother's mask," Jacob whispered. "The one said to hold the spirit of the first dancer of Takumi." The people do not just love the girl, Chief. They believe the ancestors danced through her. They believe she carries their power. The word power was the spark that lit the dry tinder of the chief's jealousy. "Her power or mine," he growled. He thought of the elders, their eyes wet with tears for her. He thought of the way his own wives whispered about her grace. The ancestors on his stool seemed to be staring at him, their wooden eyes judgmental. He felt small, a feeling he despised above all others. A chief who feels small in the presence of greatness is a chief who will try to make greatness small, Jacob murmured, as if reading his thoughts. Chief David made his decision. The girl and her ancestors were a threat. He would not share his village with a ghost. He would find a way to break her, to make the people forget her name. It began as a whisper, as all great evils do. A goat was found dead at the edge of the village. Its death was natural, likely from a snake bite. But Jacob spread a different story. "I saw the dancer near that spot at dusk," he lied to a group of women at the well. "She was moving strangely, making signs in the air." The women exchanged uneasy glances. Soon, the story grew. It wasn't just a goat, it was a fine milking goat. She wasn't just dancing, she was casting a spell. Another whisper, planted by Jacob's cousin, suggested a child had fallen ill after watching Amina dance too long. Amina felt the change in the air before she understood its cause. Smiles became averted eyes. Greetings became shorter. The warm current of love that had always carried her now had cold eddies of suspicion. Kofi heard the rumors and his blood boiled. He went to the chief's compound to demand an audience, but was turned away. "The chief is busy," the guard said, their faces hard. "A lie once planted grows faster than a weed in a rainstorm," Grace said, trying to comfort her daughter. Amina, though hurt, held her head high. She continued to dance at the small ceremonies she was asked to, but the invitations were becoming fewer. The accusations grew bolder. Jacob, standing before a gathering of the village council, which the chief oversaw, spoke with feigned sorrow. "It pains me to say this, for we all love the girl. But the strange occurrences, the misfortune that follows her dances, it cannot be ignored. My own brother's wife had a difficult birth the very night Amina last danced in the square. Is this not the work of a curse? A spirit that has perhaps attached itself to her?" The council members murmured. Some, who remembered their own joy at her dancing, protested. But fear is a powerful seed. One elder, a friend of Kofi's, stood and said, "This is foolishness. The girl is blessed, not cursed. Her grandmother's mask proves it." Chief David finally spoke, his voice heavy with false gravity. "The mask," he said. "Perhaps that is the source of the problem. It is an old, powerful object. It should be in the care of a chief for safekeeping, to ensure it is not misused." This was the plan. Isolate the dancer, take her sacred object, and break her spirit. They would accuse her, but not directly, not yet. They would make the people believe she was a danger to them. The ancestors teach, the storm does not arrive with a roar, it begins with a single cold drop of wind. The cold wind was now blowing through Takumi. That night, as Amina slept, her mother's dream became a terrible reality. Chief David's men, led by Jacob, came to their hut. They did not knock. They threw open the woven mat that served as a door. Kofi rose, reaching for his staff, but he was an old man, and there were 4 of them, young and strong. They held him back as Grace screamed. Jacob went straight to the small shelf where the sacred grandmother mask was kept, wrapped in clean cloth. He snatched it. "This is the chief's will," Jacob said, his voice devoid of any humanity. "The object is to be examined, for the safety of the village." Amina stood in the corner of the hut, her eyes wide with a fear she had never known. It was not fear for herself, but for the desecration happening before her. To see her ancestor's face, the link to her grandmother's spirit, handled by this cruel, oily man, was a violation deeper than any wound. "Please," she whispered, her voice cracking. "It is all I have of her. It is sacred." Jacob just laughed, a short, ugly sound. "Your ancestors didn't save your goat, did they?" he sneered, and then they were gone, leaving the family in the ruins of their peace. The lesson was a brutal one. When power forgets respect, it steals what it cannot create. The days that followed were a slow suffocation. Without the mask, Amina felt a part of her soul had been amputated. She could still dance, but the dance felt empty, a body without a spirit. The village was silent. No one came to their hut. Kofi's drumming was forbidden for any celebration. The chief's men patrolled, their eyes watchful. The rumors had now become accepted truth for many. Amina was a witch. She brought bad luck. The chief was protecting them by containing her power. One afternoon, a group of children, who had once followed Amina like ducklings, saw her walking to the river. They picked up small stones and threw them, not hard enough to truly hurt, but hard enough to wound her. "Witch," they chanted. Their young faces twisted into masks of cruelty they had learned from their parents. Amina stopped. She turned and looked at them, and in her eyes was not anger, but a deep, profound sorrow. The children fell silent, dropping their stones, and ran away. She understood then the depth of the poison that had been poured. A child's stone thrown in jest can break a pot, but a village's silence can break a heart. She felt her own heart cracking. The cold season had arrived, and with it, a wind that tasted of iron. It was on such a night that Chief David decided to finish his work. He could not have a symbol of opposition, even a silent one, in his village. He summoned his men. "Take her beyond the borders. Break her dancers' things, and tell the people she has been banished for cursing the village. Her name is not to be spoken again." Jacob smiled, relishing the task. They came for Amina under the cloak of a moonless sky. They dragged her from her hut as her parents wept and pleaded, their cries swallowed by the wind. They tore the strings of rare shells from her neck and ankles, scattering them like useless tears into the dust. They took her ceremonial skirts and ripped them. They found her father's small drum, the one she had learned to dance to as a child, and they smashed its head with a rock. Then, with rough hands, they pushed her out of the village, past the last huts, past the fields, and into the cold, dark savanna. "Run, witch," Jacob spat. "Run and don't look back. Your story here is finished." Amina stumbled in the darkness, the cold biting her skin, her heart a stone in her chest. But she did not curse them. A deeper wisdom, buried beneath her pain, held her tongue. A mouth that curses closes the door to the ancestors' help, her grandmother had taught her. Amina walked. The savannah at night was a place of terrors, the cough of a leopard, the rustle of unseen things in the grass, the hooting of an owl that sounded like a mocking laugh. But the terrors within her were greater. She felt hollowed out, emptied of everything she was. The dancer, without her shells, without her mask, without her village, was just a girl, lost and alone. The cold seeped into her bones. She thought of her mother and father, of their pain. She thought of the ancestors, of her grandmother's face on the stolen mask. Had they abandoned her? Had she done something wrong? She walked until her legs could carry her no more. She came to a great baobab tree, its massive trunk a dark silhouette against the star-scattered sky. She collapsed at its base, her body racked with silent sobs. She had no water, no food, no hope. As she lay there, feeling the rough bark against her back, she looked up at the stars. They were the same stars that had shone on her village, the same stars her grandmother had pointed out to her as a child, telling her they were the campfires of the ancestors. They leaned down as if to listen. In her despair, a tiny flicker of memory sparked. A proverb her father loved: "When you have crossed the river of your tears, you will find the strength to walk again." She did not know how, but she knew she had to find a way to cross this river. Dawn found Amina still alive, her body stiff with cold, but her spirit beginning to stir. She remembered stories her father told of a sacred place, a place where the veil between the worlds was thin. It was an ancient fig tree, its roots sunk deep into the earth, where the bones of the first grandmothers and grandfathers of all the villages were said to sleep. It was a place of pilgrimage, of prayer, of power. She did not know if it was real or just a legend, but she had nowhere else to go. The ancestors were her only family now. She walked for another day, following the river, asking the spirits of the water for guidance. She ate wild berries and roots, remembering the lessons the women of the village had taught her about survival. On the second sunset, she found it. It was not a tree, but a world. Its trunk was wider than 10 men, its branches a canopy that blocked the sky. Its aerial roots hung down like the dreadlocks of an ancient spirit, each one taking new hold in the earth, creating a forest from a single tree. The air around it was thick, humming with an energy that made her skin tingle. This was the place. The silence was deeper than any she had known, a listening silence. This was the court of the ancestors, she thought, her heart filling with a reverent awe. She had arrived at the doorstep of the spirit world. Amina stood before the great fig tree. She had no mask, no shells, no drums. She was stripped of everything but her own body and her will. She remembered why she was here. Not to beg, not to curse the chief, but to reconnect. To remind the ancestors that one of their own was lost and needed them. She closed her eyes. She thought of her grandmother's face. She thought of the rhythms her father had taught her, the rhythms that lived in her blood. She began to move. It was not a dance for the living. It was a language of return. Her feet, bare on the sacred earth, began to trace circles, small at first, then wider, circles that wound backward through time. She was not just standing under the fig tree. She was dancing her way back through her own life, back through her mother's life, back to the source. Her hands, rising and falling, began to call the names she had been taught, the names of those who had come before. Her grandmother, her great-grandmother, the first dancer of Takumi, whose name was now just a legend. She danced until her body was spent, until her legs trembled and her breath came in ragged gasps. But she did not stop. She poured her pain, her loneliness, her love for her village, and her plea for guidance into every aching muscle. The ancestors only answer those who show them they are willing to walk the long road back, is what the elders say. Amina was walking that road with every fiber of her being. And as she danced, children, did the ancestors hear? Did the earth begin to hum beneath her feet? Our Amina has found the sacred tree, but her journey is only beginning. The spirits are stirring. Will they answer her call? Will they give her the power she needs? The answers lie ahead in the next chapter of our tale. Rest now, and let the drums of this story echo in your dreams. Tomorrow, we will see what rises from the roots of the ancient fig.